And returning to one of our top stories this hour, the Chinese government or the party ending its close to once in a 5-year meeting with a communique to deepen reform and advance the country's modernisation. For more analysis on this third plenum, we're joined by John Gong. He's Professor of Economics at the University of International Business and Economics. Professor Gong, now earlier we spoke to our correspondent on this third plenum. She said the promises are many and ambitious. The problem lies in implementation. Do you see that as the main problem coming out of this third plenum?
Well, I think this document represents the goals that the party wants to achieve in a broad range of areas. In my view, it's quite ambitious. And more importantly, it also sets a very detailed timeline by 2029. It says that it has to complete all the reform measures mentioned in this document, a couple of areas, 7 or 8 areas, including, for example, the macroeconomic control system, the legal system, opening up, and even defense, and also in cultural areas. So it's a very broad and ambitious set of goals it sets. I think, in terms of what exactly these reforms will be, we have to be a little bit patient and wait for a very detailed press conference that's promised for tomorrow morning. By several high-ranking government officials, and I totally agree that the devil is in the details, I guess, we have to be very patient about what exactly reforms will be introduced and how likely these reforms will be indeed implemented to its full potential.
Right, Professor
once we hear about the details of these.
Yes, pardon me for cutting in. Of course, we do need more detail for this, but let's just pick up on one of those many goals, and that's socialist market economy. And the timeline for that is, in fact, 2035. The other goals are 2029. Now, socialist market economy, as I'm sure you're well aware of, coined by Jiang Zemin in 1992, promulgated in 1993. So that is a good 30 years we've had socialist market economy. That's 30 years to achieve that particular goal. And yet that pushes that back. The goal for that now is 2035. If we have not reached it in 2024, what are the chances of perfecting that socialist market economy, whatever that is, by 2035?
Yeah, I think it depends on our interpretation. I think what it talks about is the full development of the socialist market economy by 2035. And the question really boils down to how do we interpret the full development of socialist market economy. I read this document, and I think the emphasis is more on the socialist side. I mean, I counted how many times the word socialist mentioned in that document, numerous times. So I think it's a continuation of the initial mentioning of this concept, as you point out, by previous leader Jiang Zemin. But we all understand here in China, the system still needs to be perfected. And I think President Xi has his own interpretation of what exactly it means by full development of that political system and economic system. So again, I think we have to be patient to listen to the details, interpretation of that. Yeah.
I mean, all systems in principle are subject to they can always be improved on and therefore perfected. But one thing that people were looking out for, certainly ordinary people, were some sort of measures to address their short-term issues and short-term pain, maybe more specifically in the real estate sector. Now, President Xi, quite rightly, and I think at the prompting of many analysts, experts and academics as well, was to to address long-standing problems in local government debt as well as the real estate sector. And he has done that very rigorously to the detriment of many who have invested. The property sector is a very big part of the Chinese economy. Now, are there short-term measures so that these efforts to address structural problems continue, but in the meantime, pain for the ordinary people, that is being addressed as well?
No, I totally agree with you. I think there has to be a fundamental change with respect to the taxation system, the local financing of the local governments. How do we do that against the backdrop of the slowdown of the real estate market, the reform in the financial sectors, All of these things, I think, need fundamental changes. We can't go on like this, even in my view, even at the cost of short-term pain. And clearly, these things have been mentioned in this document indicates that there will be reforms being introduced in these areas in a very determined way, in my view. So I think I would expect concrete measures, concrete reforms in the areas you have just mentioned will be indeed discussed tomorrow morning and will be introduced very soon. And we would expect to see fundamental changes in the areas you just mentioned.
So this final thing, we would look for concrete measures, at least in income distribution and fiscal assistance as well. So local government, how much they get, how much they are expected to spend as well. 2029 is just 5 years away. If China is going to reach that goal of addressing long-standing issues of local government debt, are we seeing the progress that we need to see now so it reaches that goal in 2029?
Well, I think the issue is to maintain the local government debt level to be sustainable. We're not talking about paying off all these debts. I don't think within 5 years we're going to pay off all the local government debt. It's a huge, huge amount. I think as long as the cash flow at the local government fiscal level is sustainable, is somewhat balanced, I think we are okay. I've heard several ways of addressing that problem. I think the idea is to come up with ways at least to make the local government fiscally sustainable. Otherwise, we're going to be in deep trouble. The current model, very much relying upon the sales of local land, is not going to be sustainable given the real estate property market situation in China right now, and given the future trend in that market segment as well. I think China's demographic change is indicating that this market is going to be slowing down in a fundamental way, and that the local government budgets cannot be relying upon that revenue sources. And had to be come up with a fundamental change in how the tax revenues will be coming from, and how the revenues be split between the local governments and the central government.
Thanks, Professor John Gong from the University of International Business and Economics, breaking down that communique coming out of China's third plenary session.